Hello, good morning, everyone. We are on chapter 13 today of our Proverbs Get Wise challenge. So go ahead and turn to chapter 13 if you're not already there. And if you watched 10, I did this with chapter 10 as well. But today we're going to go ahead and go verse by verse once you get there. And you're going to need paper and pen, whether that's a journal or just loose leaf paper. But for Proverbs like this, where literally every verse is pretty chocked full of wisdom, I think the best way to gain from it is to go verse by verse and write out what you gain from it to the side, or an easy way to remember it. So I'll give you some examples. And that's how we're going to start today. So for example, for like 1, 2, and 3, I'll tell you what I put. So for chapter 13, verse 1, it says, "A wise son hears his father's instruction, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke." So I put, wise people listen to wise rebuke or instruction, but scoffers do not. And then I said, which do I want to be? And that for me helps me know, even if I don't like it, if people rebuke something that I do or say, or they try to give me instruction, and a lot of times we don't like to be told what to do. But there's a lot of wisdom in listening and trying to gain from anyone who tells you a certain thing. And sometimes people tell you not wise things. Sometimes people tell you really wise things. So making sure to listen to everyone and weed through it and see what is true and to keep it, instead of just like the scoffers just shrugging it off. So I put down just a little phrase that helps me remember that. Verse 2, "From the fruit of his mouth a man eats what is good, but the desire of the treacherous is for violence." So I put, what do I desire? Good or violence is what I put. And then I said, then I need to watch how I talk to people. Specifically says, because it says, "From the fruit of his mouth a man eats what is good." Well, what comes from the mouth? Most importantly, or particularly, speech. So whether that's talking about others, gossiping, whatever, it's obvious that the fruit of this man's mouth, so what comes from it, is good. So to me, that tells me I need to be making sure in everything I do, when I'm talking about people, situations, things like that, am I really doing the best I can to uplift it well? Or am I gossiping or trashing it? Because it says that's what the treacherous does. They desire violence. And so, so I just wrote, what do I desire? And ultimately, I desire good. So that means that I need to watch that. 3, for verse 3, it says, "Whoever guards his mouth perceives his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin." So I put, there is wisdom in guarding what comes out of my mouth. It could lead to ruin if I am not wise/careful about it. So these are really good. Each verse literally has so much wisdom. So my challenge for you is to go ahead, take some time, pause. Something I love to do is put on worship music in the background when I'm doing something like this. And just write out, how does this apply to my life? What can I take from this? How is this possibly applied to my life? And write it out per verse. It can be one word, it can be longer, whatever you feel like. And then go ahead and come back. So go ahead and pause now. Okay, guys, welcome back. I hope that was a long enough pause break. I hope you enjoyed that time. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, when I did this, there was a repeating theme that really stuck out to me that I felt led to share about or talk about. So that's what I'm going to talk about for the remainder of this time. And that is, if you look at verse 1 and 18, which we'll read together in a second, and it also mentions something similar again in 8, it's this perpetual theme. And again, verse 1 says, "A wise son hears his father's instruction, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke." Verse 18, poverty and disgrace come to him who ignore instruction, but whoever heeds reproof is honored. And then if you look at 8, the ransom of a man's life is his wealth, but a poor man hears no threat. Okay, so there's something in common with each of these verses. More pointedly, you can look at verse 1 and 18 and see that it's talking about someone who ignores instruction, rebuke, or reproof. 1 says a scoffer doesn't listen to it, and then 18 says poverty and disgrace come to people who ignore instruction. And so my question for you is, have you ever met someone or yourself done this, but I know I have done both, but have you met someone who you try to tell something to that will help them, and they're like, yeah, and they don't listen, or they brush it off? Or have you ever tried to help someone and say, hey, I know you may not want to hear this, but you're doing this, and they storm off and they don't listen to you maybe? Or have you done that to someone else? Well, that's what it's talking about here. And I think we live in a society that is plagued by do your own thing, don't let others tell you what you can or can't do. And I think that you can take that with a grain of salt, that sometimes that can be wise to not listen to what others are telling you. But a lot of time, especially the people that are wise in our life, like parents or wise friends or spiritual mentors or people that don't have any harm for us in our life, they only want good for us. When they're telling us something that we don't want to hear, often we don't want to hear it because it's true, because it hurts. And so I think this proverb, it's funny because it continues to hit on the same point as we go throughout the proverb. And it kind of makes me laugh a little because it's something that no matter who you are, I think we can all relate to that. I think we've all ignored someone's instruction before, or their rebuke, or we know people who've done that. We just wish with our everything that they would have listened. So to me, a huge takeaway I got from reading this chapter is to not take that lightly. Anytime someone has something to say to me that maybe says I did something wrong, or I should have done it a better way, even though my first reaction will be, I don't want to listen to this on the inside, to listen to what they say and to really look back on what happened with unbiased eyes and try to see the truth in it. I say this, but you gotta have, Scripture also refers to this as take every thought captive. I don't think everyone who comes to you is going to have your best interest in heart. And there will be some people that say things to you that are not true. So you got to be able, with God's wisdom, to discern what is true and what isn't, and split it apart. But for the most part, what I got from saying listen to rebuke and instruction, one, it was coming from his father, a wise source who loved him. And it was good for him. And so that just made me rethink about my life, and I hope it makes you rethink about your life. And the next time that someone who cares about you tells you something that's hard to hear, you really sit back and choose to listen to it and not just quickly dismiss it. And may we be people that do that anyone could come to and tell us maybe something we did wrong, and we receive it with grace and maybe an apology, or we choose to listen and do something good about it. Verse 8 also hits on that. It says, a poor man hears no threat. When I looked deeper into that, it was also said he hears no rebuke. He's basically, this verse is talking about because he doesn't have much to lose. He doesn't, as a poor man, he doesn't listen to anything that could be a threat to him or something like that. So it's just this continual mention of it. So I think that's important to hit. And then verse 4 really stuck out to me as well. It says, the soul of the sluggard, if I can read, the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. I think this is, for anything, such a big piece of advice for college students, especially for you guys, because I know in college more than any other time in my life, it was so hard to not be a sluggard. It was so hard to practice diligence and discipline in everything I did. So with my schedule, with managing my time, with choosing not to put off things, I still do that. But especially in college, that was for the first time that I had to manage my own schedule and time well, and a whole lot of homework and all this stuff, just like you guys. And so I think this proverb is something you can really take to heart, and it will apply to the rest of your life. The habits you set up now for yourself in your life regarding discipline and diligence will stay with you. And so take time to set up a good habit of being diligent and disciplined, even sometimes when you don't want to. But being diligent and doing the things that you need to do and setting out a time for that. Because like it said, the soul of a sluggard craves, they want, but they don't get anything. Because they weren't diligent. But then it says, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. Because they were diligent about it. They went and did what they needed to do, so their needs were taken care of, because they were wise with their time and their supplies. And so I think that is a huge message for all of us, to be diligent with what we have, with our time, our supplies, our everything, and to not just let it go by. So those are two things that were laid out to me that I really wanted to share with you guys. I hope this time was really good for y'all, and that you gained other things, that you saw a theme, and that really stuck out to you. If not, go back over and see if there was a theme that kind of stuck out to you from what you wrote. And then I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys next Wednesday. So, bye!